And it shows, it validates that he couldn't even handle a raw diet because he had to live on the cooked leaves of various herbs and plants that he inhaled daily, throughout the day. It shows dishonesty right there. So it was cruelty without, in a context of ignorance. He wasn't even aware of the cruelty he was imposing on his family because it wasn't fair. He was imposing upon his family what he was not even willing to impose upon himself through oversight. If he had shared his pipe with the rest of us, we would not have been alcoholics. We would have still been on the starvation diet, and we would have realized that somebody would have gotten smart and realized that we're not on a raw diet anymore. We're on a cooked food diet because we're inhaling the smoke of cooked leaves. And as I see it, when people smoke, they exhale the smoke. And, when they smoke, they put it into their bloodstream through their lungs. Their lungs becomes a stomach of sorts in which it absorbs the altered chemistry of the smoke. If it was raw aroma of a flower, that's different. But to cook the leaf of the flower or the petal of the flower or both, or the roots for that matter, the stem, and inhale it means you've now ingested the constituents of the altered chemistry of that flower or plant, and now it's cooked food. It's not raw anymore. And you're taking it into your bloodstream, and then in between smokes, you're exhaling that residue from your lungs. Your lungs are getting cleared out, and your bloodstream is depleting of those cooked constituents. So then you have to take another smoke. It's just like eating. It becomes a habit-forming experience. But most people are geared to eating cooked food through the stomach, not through the lungs. So my father was making up the difference through the lungs. But nobody else in the family got the benefit, especially of the stimulating effect of the nicotine or whatever herbs are in pipe smoke, because he was a pipe smoker, not a cigarette smoker, to counter-effect the depressing quality of the alcoholism in the food. Because the food, the calories, the carbohydrate calories were turning to alcohol. And I suppose other constituents of the food were breaking down as well. The bacteria were breaking everything down. If there was any... Well, there's not much... there's not much fat in leafy greens, but the fat that's there is the high-quality type. I forget what it's called. But it's almost strictly the high-quality type. Even though there's not much there, there is some. So you can't get a heart attack from it, in other words. Eating leafy greens as your exclusive source of fats would prevent strokes and heart attacks because it's extremely high quality. And I think that's the value of vegetables, is that they prevent strokes and heart attacks, provided you don't have any other source of fats in your diet. But alcohol is a cousin to fat, I learned. Because when fat breaks down, you're left with fatty acid on the one hand and glycerin on the other. And glycerin has no unique signature. It's the same. Glycerin is glycerin. And glycerin, the chemical term is glycerol. So glycerin is actually a type of alcohol. So fat people are basically alcoholics, except they're taking it from fat, not from alcohol, and that makes it easier for their physiology to put on weight. But you can put on weight with alcohol too. That's why people get, put on weight when they drink beer or whatever, because it's a kissing cousin to fat. But fatty acid has a signature to it, and each fatty acid is different and unique, and that's what gives each oil its own unique property. While glycerin is glycerin, it's the same across the board. So, where was I with this? So I guess my father loved his pipe. And maybe he loved his pipe more than he loved his wife, because his wife and his two boys were suffering. They were starving. I only starved up to the beginning of the 3rd trimester, because from that point on, my mother gave me cooked food while I was in her womb, and thus I was able to be born, because I was 10 to 11 years after the inception of their marriage, in which they started this diet right away. First year, though, they didn't start right away. They included cooked potatoes as a transition food. So my brother never gestated under the circumstances under which I gestated. So he was able to be born, but he was raised the way that I was gestated for my first 2 trimesters. He was raised on this diet under those circumstances, and so any problems he had with development, which were severe, he grew out of. But I wasn't raised that way, and so I didn't have developmental problems post-birth. I had them prior to birth. And so they become set in stone. They're congenital defects, and thus the only way out of it is regeneration. And I feel that Becker has done me some good, in a small way, because it's a time thing. It takes time for regeneration to occur if it's not specific and wound-oriented, such as Becker's research was oriented towards. Mine is oriented towards chronic care of the whole body, and so the body decides what to regenerate and how quickly. And I don't push it, and I don't push its focus by incurring a wound, which I don't know how you do it in the case of a organ. Do you remove a portion of the liver? I guess so, right. If you wanted the organ to regenerate its entirety, you would have to eliminate a portion of it. And according to his research, I think it's chapter 12 of his book, The Body Electric, concerning the heart of a newt, the removal portion was 30 to 50% of the heart. So maybe that is the window for all the internal organs. You have to remove 30 to 50% of whatever is there that you find there, or maybe it's 30 to 50% of what it should have been ideally. So if the liver is diminished by 5%, there's missing 5% of it, then you have to recompute based on adding the 5% and then taking 30 to 50% of that. I don't know. I have to speculate openly, because that would be an issue, right? It would matter. But that might be, at any case, what he learned from the heart of a newt might apply to all internal organs. So you have to create a wound, anyway, an internal bleeding or an external bleeding, to get the body to focus in order to apply silver to get the body to fix the matter. Well, anywho, so I was only born because my mother went back to love of food and turned away from the love of her husband. Had he shared his pipe, they would have figured out what was going on. If he had shared his pipe with his family members and smoked it as incense, as general smoke, well, no, wait a minute. We were all getting secondhand smoke. Why would that not work? Maybe it's not intense enough. Or maybe the person doesn't own it. What, huh? Maybe smoking is a form of domination of others. Because when you burn incense, everybody shares. Holy crap.